discount this cash flow, we need a discount factor, a rate R, am I right? Such an interest rate is determined by the future market condition, am I right? And the future market condition represents the uncertainty of the future. If you are not sure about future, you will have higher discount rates. If you have a certainty about future, you have lower discount rates. And that's a general idea about risk, and we will discuss it further, okay? Last week, we talked about preferred share, ordinary share, and we talked about dividend discount model. We talked about free cash flow approach. We talked about investment banking functions and other rights offering, seasonal equity offering, etc., etc. And most importantly, last week we talked about your assignment 2, right? I hope by now you should have at least have a general idea about your assignment 2, what it's all about. And I hope by now that you should have known whether you're going to do it in a group or you will do it individually. Okay? Learning outcomes for this week. After studying this week's topic, you will be able to, first of all, you will be able to know how to calculate return in dollar term and percentage term. Very, very easy to understand. For example, today, if I invest $100, at the end of the year, this project gives me $110. How much is my dollar return? Very easy, $10, right? How much is my percentage return? 10%. As you all can see, you know how to do this kind of calculation. Sounds very easy, right? But I will give you more example, and you will tell me, how do you think? Second, you will be able to measure return and risk of a financial asset. I will give you a quick example about how to do it. Third, you will be able to distinguish between systematic and unsystematic risk. What is systematic risk? What is unsystematic risk? Why should we need to learn how to distinguish this kind of risk? Why is it so important for you to know the differences? Finally, you will be able to describe the concept of diversification and why it is so important. Up to this stage, any questions? Okay. Now, understanding the return. What is return? I'm pretty sure that all of you guys have a general idea. So the return earned on an investment represents the marginal benefit of investing. Risk represents the marginal cost of investing, and there are always a trade-off between return and risk. So return is the benefit for investing into a project. Risk is the uncertainty, the cost of returning or investing into the project. For example, today, if I want to invest into share market, if I decide to invest into Woolworths, a retail company, right? In this case, I have a certain kind of expected return. On the other hand, there's kind of certainty. The risk must be low because it's a supermarket, isn't it? On the other hand, if today you want to invest into a mining company, on one hand, you will have higher expected return. But on the other hand, as you all know, you must take higher risk. High risk, high return. Low risk, low return. No risk, no return. Does this make sense for you? All right. As long as we know the relationship between the trade-off of expected risk and return, let's look at this general relationship before we formally start. Look at this beautiful graph. Horizontal axis risk, vertical is return. Now, as you can see, where is bond? And where is notes? Bond and notes. Low risk, low return. Am I right? What about share? High risk, high return. Can you see that? And as we all know, of course, share is higher risk than bond and debt item, right? As previously discussed in the first week. Okay, let's measure return. How to calculate return? As previously discussed, You may think estimating of return is very easy. Yes, it is easy. But understanding of the return is not that easy. You might think you understand of everything, but I will ask you a few questions. Think. Total return is the total gain or loss experienced on an investment over a given period of time. Now let me ask you a question. You tell me how much is the total return, okay? Total return could be either like an income stream or it could be from capital gain. Most importantly, total return could be represented by either dollar return or percentage return. Now let me ask you a question. Today I invest into a share, I buy a share at a price of $10. I will only hold it for 1 year. At the end of the year, the dividends is $1. And I am able to sell the share at a price of $11. Question, how much is my total dollar return? Dollar return. $2, am I right? $1 dividends and $1 capital gain. Because share price, I'm selling it from 10 to 11. That $1 is called capital gain. Capital gain, it means the gain from the capital value. In practice, it's quite important for you to be able to differentiate capital gain and income because they are under the different tax rate. So in my example, apparently, the $1 dividends is my income, am I right? And the $1 capital gain is from selling the share. So in terms of total dollar return, it will be $2, right? How much is my total percentage return? 20%. Do you agree? Do you agree? Now, second question. Today, I invest into the share, $10. Same question, same example. At the end of the year, I have $1 dividends and sell the share at $11. Question, how much is my total percentage return from dividends? Do you agree? How much is my total percentage return from dividends? $1 divided by $10, which is 10%. Am I right? Very good. How much is my total percentage return from capital gain? 10% as well. Do you agree? I'm selling the share for $11, and then $1 divided by 10% capital gain. Return from dividends, normally named as dividend yield. Return from capital gain, normally named as capital gain yield. Your total percentage return in this case is equals to return on dividends plus return on capital gain, 10 plus 10, which is 20%. Am I right? This is a very simple example. I'm pretty sure that you should also know how to do this kind of calculation, okay? Let's see the example from the lecture slides. Now, total dollar return, as per discussed, is equals to amount of income, dividends, plus capital gain. Am I right? Total percentage return is equals to dividend yield plus capital gain yield, as per discussed. Let's see the question. Two different questions. The first one, Harriel bought 100 shares at a price of $25 per share. A year later, for each of the shares, dividend $1, and you can sold the share for $30. So the question is easy. For each of the share, I buy the share at price of $25. A year later, I have $1 dividends in my pocket, and I am also able to sell the share at $30. So for each of the share, each of them, how much is your total dollar return? $6, right? Total dollar return. $1 dividends and $5 capital gain. Put together, $6. Do you agree? So put together $6, how many shares are actually invested at the beginning of the year? 100 shares, right? So how much is my total dollar return of this investment? $600, am I right? Do you agree? So basically, for each of the share, your total dollar return will be 1 plus 5, 100 shares, your total dollar return will be 100 shares times 6, which will be $600. Any questions up to this stage? Any questions? Good. Let's look at the second example. In second example, Owen bought 50 shares at a price of $15 per share. A year later, there's no dividends, but you are able to sell the share at $25 per share. Question, how much is your dollar return per share? I invest at 15, sell at 25 for each of the share. 10, am I right? How many shares? 50 shares, right? So how much is your total dollar return of this investment? How much is it? Am I right? $500. So basically, number of shares times dollar return of each of the share, which will be 500. Am I right? Now, these two projects, the first one Terrier, the second one Owen, which one give you higher dollar return? First one? Which one is better? How do you think? Which one is better? So you said a group of students there said second one. How do you guys think? Second one? Why? Okay, very good. Now you guys told me, Herbert, yes, the first one have higher dollar return, but let's look at the percentage return. Let's look at the percentage return. What's going on here? Now, how do we calculate the percentage return? For percentage return, all we need to do is to use your gain on each of the share divided by the share price, right? So to calculate percentage return, basically, what happened? If we calculate percentage return for the first investment, what happened? Quick. Your total dollar return is $600, right? Your initial investment is $2,500, am I right? Your percentage return is only 25% or 24%. For the second investment, your total dollar return, how much is it? 500. But your initial investment is 750, and your percentage return is 66.67%. Do you agree? Which one is higher? And is this the reason that we told me second one is better? Do you guys agree? Look, and that's the beauty of dollar return and percentage return. Let me see it again. If you look at the slides here, when we calculate dollar return, it looks like the first project gives you higher dollar return, right? But some of the students may realize errors. The first project gives us higher dollar return simply because you invest more at the beginning. For the first project, the total amount of money you invested is $2,500 because you bought 100 shares at $25 per share. Am I right? The only reason that the second investment gives us lower dollar return is because you only invested $750. 50 shares times $25 per share. Do you agree? And then we do the calculation of the percentage return by applying the knowledge we've just been discussed, the dividend return and the capital gain return. And then you realize it looks like the second investment gives you high percentage return. Up to this stage, any questions? Let me ask you a question. So basically, from this example, there is something very funny that you can tell. That is, it looks like for an investment, its dollar return and percentage return might give us different conclusion. Am I right? Or different outcome or results. If this is the case, which way should we follow? Is it always percentage? Or is it always dollar? It depends. It depends. Let's do an example. Let me ask you a question. Today, assume I have $20 in my pocket. Okay, I have $20 in my pocket. So this is my first investment opportunity. That is, if I invest $20, it will give me $5 return. Okay? I invest $20, it will give me $5 return. How much is the percentage return? 5 divided by 20, 25%. Do you agree? I invest 20, it gives me $5. Okay? Now, alternatively, there is another investment opportunity. For the second opportunity, if I invest $10, it will give me $4 return. How much is my percentage return? 40%. Do you agree? Because I invest $10, it gives me $14. $4 return. What is the percentage return? 40%, right? Question. If this is the case, which project should I go for? I will. Quick. So what do you think? Which project should I go for? First, second. How do you not think from the back? You need to think. We're talking about money. I always told my students, if you don't like finance, you don't like money. You need to think. This is something that you need in practice. Why do you think that the second one is better?
If I have $20 in my hand, I could get $5. But if I have to borrow from somebody, then I will go for 40%.
Not borrow. It is you only have two investment opportunities. Don't make it complex. You're only able to invest in one. Yes.
The percentage is more than 40%. Moreover, if I invest $20 in a project B.
Good. I like you to get involved. Think. You can bring think.
I'm investing less and getting more.
Very good.
That's first situation. The percentage return is less, but we had $20 to invest and we are getting $1 more. So I think we'll choose the first.
You are right. In this case, in fact, we should go for the first one. Why? I have $20 in my pocket. I invest into the first one. How much money do I have in my pocket at the end of the investment? 25. That's it, right? Okay, if I go for the second option, I invest $10 into this project. How much is my return? I have $40, right? And then I have $10 uninvested cash flow. Put together, how much money do I have in my pocket? Huh? I'm asking you, put together, how much money do I have in my pocket? 24. Which one is better? Sometimes we need to think about percentage return. That's absolutely correct. I'm giving you this example because I used to have students ask me, Harold, what's the point of dollar return? We should always look at the percentage return. Not really. At the end of the day, dollar is dollar. You have to think about the scale issue. This is called scale issue. Okay, you have to think about the scale of the investments. Okay?
What if we invest $20 in project B?
You can't invest $20 in project B.
If we have $100, we can invest $20 the whole amount in project B as well.
Okay, so that means that what about if I invest $20 in project B? There is only one project B. You can't invest in twice. You're right. If you do have other investment opportunity, you may have, see for example, there is a project C, what should you do? That's another option. But that will be one of the workshop questions. I will talk about this question at the end of the session. Yeah, but in our examples, we just simply think about the return itself. But you are right about the alternative options. Okay? But in this example, I'm merely talking about returns. I haven't put this into consideration. That's the second part of the sentence. But just give you this example as an illustration to give you an idea about the difference of dollar and percentage. In practice, you need to take books. Okay, you need to take books of them. Does this make sense for you? Alright. And that's basically everything about dollar and percentage return. But as per we discussed, when we try to calculate percentage return, the return that generated from dividends is named as dividend yield. I told you, right? The return that generated from capital gain is named as capital gain yield. Let's do one practice. The company paid a one-time special dividends of 3.08 on 15th of November. Now, some of you guys, when you do your assignment 2, when you download the dividend history of your selected company, you may realize our companies may pay special dividends. And then some of you guys may ask me, hey Robert, if they pay special dividends, what should we do? When you try to estimate the growth rate of dividends, you should always base on the regular dividends, am I right? Because only regular dividends help you to estimate the growth rate, right? Special dividends is more like an extraordinary event. Then should you consider it into your calculation? Or should you include it into your growth rate calculation? Think about it, don't ask me. But in this example, you can think about whether should you put it into your growth rate estimation. Okay? Alright. It is a one-time only special dividends. $3.08 on 15th of November. Suppose you bought the share at $28.08 and you sold it immediately after you received the dividends at $27.39. Okay, this question is easy. How much is your total percentage return? Our total percentage return comes from dividends and capital gain. The total percentage return is very easy to be estimated. Dividends plus selling price minus purchase price divided by purchasing price. That's it. Am I right? So if you want to work out the total percentage return, R is equals to $3.08 dividends plus selling price minus purchasing price divided by purchasing price, which will give you a percentage return of 8.51%. No problem. If you look at this question and calculation, as you can see, the capital gain is actually negative. Am I right? To this end, if you decompose it, the calculation into two parts, if you calculate dividend yield and capital gain yield separately, that is return from dividends only, it is actually much higher. It's about 10.97%. And if you calculate capital gain, it is negative. You put it together, it gives you the same solution. It will be 8.51%. Just about how to calculate percentage return. Any questions? In practice, that's how we work out return. Very easy. Ending price minus beginning price divided by beginning price. You work out holding period. And that's how we work out percentage return for share. For example, what is my holding period return for 1 day, for 2 days, for 1 month, for 1 year? We're using adjusted price. And that's how we work out percentage return. Now, up to this stage, with all of my examples, any questions? Any questions? Okay, good. Something very interesting that I would like to share with you, a very important definition, and this definition will be applied in next week's lecture. Okay? Please note that this definition is partially related to your assessment as well. In your assignment 2, part B, the last part, the theory part, it is asking you to discuss the drawbacks and limitations of the dividend discount model in estimate cost of equity R. Am I right? And then it asks you to propose 2 different methods that can be used to calculate cost of equity, which is your expected return, cost of using equity. Am I right? One of the methods will be discussed next week, actually. There's many different methods. Next week, I will discuss one of them. If you want, you can use the one we will discuss on next week, which is called capital asset pricing model, CAPM. Okay? The week after, yeah, next week is great, right? And of course, you can use your own method. If you do your issue review by yourself, you may search for other methods. This is entirely up to you. Okay. All right. the additional return that an investment must offer relative to some alternative because it is more risky than an alternative. And that is called risk premium. Generally speaking, in practice, the risk premium definition mainly applies on all of our investments or the risk-free rate. Now, please remember, in practice, there is a return is named as risk-free rate. Risk-free rate means a risk or an asset that is free from risk, no risk. In practice, for those kind of nearly no risk assets, it will still give you return. Those kind of assets include government bonds. For example, Australian government bonds. You still remember in week 2, I showed you the ranking, right? Australia is AAA, Switzerland is AAA. Those kind of government, when they issue a bond, is essentially like a risk-free rate. This bond is free from risk, nearly zero risk. But this kind of item will still offer you with a return. For example, today, Australian government bond will give you a return of 2%. In this case, the return is named as risk-free return, which means in practice, without doing anything, without taking any kind of risk, you should have 2% of the return every year. Get it? Now, if this is the case, this example, today, if I invest into a share, at the end of the year, this share gives me a return of 10%. Within this 10%, 2% of that is risk-free rate. The risk premium is only 8%. Premium reward for risk. Does this make sense for you? And that's the definition of risk premium. Risk premium means premium reward for additional risk. So if today you invest into a share, give you a 10% of return, the risk premium component is only 8%. The 2% of that is a risk-free component. Everyone will have it, not only you. Does this make sense for you? Okay. This definition will be further discussed on next week. Now, after talking about the risk premium, let's talk about return and risk. Asset classes with greater volatility pay higher average return. Average return on shares is more than double the average return on bonds. But on average, shares are also twice as volatile. Therefore, on average, share carries a bigger risk premium as compared to bonds. I do have one example about risk premium. Now, I would like to show you this example about risk premium. Return on ordinary share 10%, risk-free rate 4%. What is risk premium? 6%. That's it. Okay? And basically, after this slide, that is everything that I would like to discuss with you about return. And in the next part of the seminar, I will talk about risk and how to measure risk. Any questions up to this stage? Okay. The beauty of the unit risk. First of all, I would like to show you something called standard deviation, and this is the return, or this is the relationship between standard deviation and risk. A lot of students may have no idea about standard deviation or something. Don't worry, I'll show you step by step. First of all, let me ask you a question. How do we measure risk? And in your opinion, how do we capture risk? If we use share as an example, or share price as an example, risk is actually captures the volatility of the share price movements. Am I right? Do you agree? All right, let me show you something because you look very puzzled. Can I please borrow a pen and paper from a student? Just let me try whether this is working. You working? Auto focus. Is too bright? Okay, it's working. Yes. Let me ask you something, and you do this practice together with me, but I need to make sure this is working. Okay. Can you see? Can you see? Can I borrow another pen? A very simple example. Now, these are two timelines for A and B, project A and as share A and share B. At the beginning, this is time 0, and this is time 0. And let's assume this is day 1, day 1, day 2, day 2, etc., to time t. In this timeline, I want to show you the share price movements, and you tell me which one is more riskier in your opinion, okay? For share A, start from time 0, there is a share price. And then in the following day, it goes up, and then it goes down. Up, down, up, down, up, down. And that's how a share price looks like. And that's for share A. Okay? Now, let's see share B. At the beginning, there is a share price. In day 1, it goes up, down, up, down, up, down. And that's for share B, the price movements. It goes up by $10 and then decrease by $10, then goes up by $3, etc., etc. Do you understand this timeline standing for? The movement of share price every day, time zero is share price movement, right? Without earning everything. So these two lines represent the movement of the share price volatility, right? Up and down, up and down, up and down. A and B. Without learning anything about risk and return, from your opinion, which one have higher risk? B. So in your opinion, which one have higher risk? B. How do you guys think? Do we all agree on B? Why? We don't even know what is risk. Why does you are telling B have higher risk? More volatile, right? And that's probably the only reason. See, this is kind of common sense. The reason that you told me B have higher risk is because of the volatility. Look at A. A's movement is like up by 1, down by 1, up 1, down by 1, up 1, down 1, up 1, down 1. The volatility is very, very small, isn't it? A low volatility. But if you look at the B, it's more like increase by $5, decrease by $10. Then increase by $3, and then decrease by $20. To this end, all of you guys draw a same conclusion, and you all conclude that, hey Robert, I know B have higher risk. Why? Because it is more volatile. That's it. That's risk. And that's the definition of risk. B is more volatile. If we talk about future returns, it's more like it is have higher uncertainty. That's it. That's everything about risk. The next question is, if this is the case, how do we measure risk? Okay, we know B is more volatile, but how do we measure risk? How do we capture risk? One method is very easy. How? What about if you can capture the magnitudes of the up and down movements? Up by 1, down by 1, up by 1, down by 1, up by 5, down by 10, up by 4, down by 3. What about if you can capture the magnitude of the up and down movements, the volatility? And then you simply compare the magnitudes. You will then work out the risk of each of them, or you will then work out the proxy of risk for each of the assets. Do you agree? Do you agree? And then, how do we work it out? Very easy. We use a method called variance and standard deviation. That is, For each of the financial assets, the first step, let's work out the average return. For example, in the past 10 years, we work out its average return on average. Then, for each of the return, let's work out its up and down movements. This up and down movements is named as standard deviation. Deviation means deviate. The return deviates from its average value. Okay? Why is named as standard deviation? Because it's trying to capture the return that deviated from its average value. For example, if your past 10-year return is 10%, and in day one, your return is 20%. In day one, your return is 10% deviate from your average return. Am I right? If in day two, your return, listen carefully, is negative 20%. Your average return is 10%. In day two, your return is negative 20%, which means in day two, your return is 30% deviate from average return. Am I right? In day three, it is 20%. Again, it's 10% deviate. And that's how we work out the magnitudes. Then we sum it up. And then we will work out a proxy of risk for each of the financial assets. And that's basically everything about how we capture risk. After this stage, if you still don't understand, that's okay. I will show you the method together with an equation. We do it step by step. Let's move back to our slides. Okay. Now, in your slides, we've talked about the movements of up and down. And this is not actually captured by the variability of equity returns by variance. Now, please look at this equation here, and I will show you why. If you look at this equation, variance itself represents, listen carefully, the risk of the asset. If you look at the bracket here inside, summation means sum of all of the deviations of the return from its average value. Please look at the value in the bracket. I will explain it one by one. This equation looks complex, but in fact is very easy to understand. RT is your return on that day, on time t. R hat or R bar is your average return. Okay? RT minus R hat is give you the magnitude of up and down. Am I right? Do you agree? Do you still remember the graph I showed you up and down? RT minus R hat gives you the magnitude of up and down. But please remember, if you use RT minus R hat, if it goes up, it is positive, right? But if it goes down, it is negative, right? But still, it is volatile. If you simply sum it together, it will cancel out. Do you agree? To this end, mathematical solution, we put a square, because as we all know, if you put a square on a value, it will give you a positive value. Am I right? And that's why, for each of the distance, each of up and down, we take the square. And then we sum all of up and down. Because RT minus R hat gives you a up or down, right? We take the square. For each of them, we sum it up. To this end, we will have the total amount of magnitude of up and down for these underlying assets. Okay? And then mathematically, we divide it by n minus 1. We will have the average up and down for each of the components, or for each of day's return. Don't ask me why it is n minus 1. It is a mathematical specification. A lot of students told me it should be n, but in fact, we need to allow for 1 degree of standard error. Don't worry about it. It's more like an average. And of course, in this case, the variance is more like the square value, but we want the average value. we then take a square root, we will have a standard deviation. Okay, we will have a standard deviation. Now, you may still get confused, but that's okay. Let's do a very simple example together. All right, let's do a very, very simple example together. Now, let's assume the average return of one asset is, for example, 10%. 10%. Let's do it together, okay? In day one, its return is 20%. Okay? So how much is the difference? 10%. So R1 minus R average is 10%. Am I right? R1 minus R average is 10%. We take the square, it will be 1%. Okay? So we have this 1%, we leave it here. And that's for day one. And then for day two, it is negative 20%. Negative 20%. Negative 20% minus 10% will give you negative 30%. You agree? We take a square. How much is it? 9%. Am I right? Do you agree? So you have 1% and 9%. You sum it up. You will have the numerator. Let's assume this is only 2 days. And then your numerator will be 10%. You divide by n, which is 2 days only, minus 1. So you divide by 1. So the variance of this example is 10%. That's it. And you take the square root, it will give you the standard deviation. So basically, standard deviation gives you, on average, the magnitudes of the underlying asset return that deviate from its mean value. The higher the standard deviation, the higher the variance, the higher the risk. That's it. And this method is applied to capture the magnitude of movements of the up and downs. Up to this stage, any questions? It may still get a little bit confusing. That's okay. We have more and more examples. Let's do it step by step. Okay, let's do it step by step. All right, let's see one example. A practical example that's from Australian Stock Exchange share market. Let's do this example together, step by step. Annual return on Australian all-ordinary share index from 2004 to 2008. Now, as you can see, in 2008, the return is negative 43%, right? From this table, what happened? On that year, global financial crisis. Okay. And the year before, 2006 and 2007, the market is kind of crazy. Okay, very good. I still remember I bought my first property at 2008, right before the global crisis. And the property price is one thing. Most importantly, the economy back then is kind of crazy. On April 2008, I bought my property. I went to the bank because I need mortgage. I talked to the bank. I want bank loan. I negotiated with the bank, and they offered me a fixed rate of mortgage. Do you guys know how much is it back then? 8.98%, nearly 9%. Today it's only about 4.5%. It's like double. So I fixed for 2 years. And then 4 months later, the interest rate dropped to 6% or 4%. Okay, but that's global financial crisis. But right before the recession, right before the crisis, the market, at least in Australia, is very good. Okay. All right. Let's do the practice. We want to know the risk, or we want to measure the risk of the market. Based on these 5 years out, we want to measure the risk of that 5 to 3 years. If you want to measure risk, which means you need to apply the method developed in the previous slide to capture the magnitude of the up and down movements. Right? So first of all, if you want to capture the magnitude of up and down movements, firstly, you need to get mean, average value. Mean means average. Okay? You need to get average value mean. So what should you do? You can use mathematical average in this case. Mathematical average means we simply sum them together divided by 5. That's it. Okay? What about geometric average? Do research by yourself. What about other method? Do research by yourself. Why? Because in your second assignment, when you calculate growth rates based on past training stuff, you may need to use those methods. But no matter what method that you are using, you need to state it and explain. Give me a reason. Okay, simply state the reason that's why you're using this method. All right. So step one, we need to work out the average. Let's do this question one by one, step by step. So step one, calculate the average return. Average return, we have 5 years return. We sum them up, divide by 5, and your average return is about 9.74%. About step one, any questions? Quick. Just about step one, any questions? Any questions? Not hard, right? Step two is a little bit complex. For step two, basically, we need to calculate the differences of each of the return from its average. Am I right? Differences of each of the return from its average, and then take a what? Square, right? Do you agree? And then take a square and question how many returns? 5 returns, right? So you will have 5 differences, am I right? And then you take the square of all these 5 differences, am I right? And then you sum it up. Do you agree? You will then have a numerator. So what happened here is, for each of the return, you take the difference, and then you take the square. You repeat the process for 5 times. The last return will be negative 43% minus negative 9.74%, and then you sum them up. You sum them up, it will then give you the numerator of the variance. You then divide by n minus 1. How many returns? N minus 1 will be 4. So you divide by n minus 1, divide by 4. And finally, you will have your variance represented by sigma square. If you don't want to remember the name, that's what you just call it variance. But mathematically, it's represented as sigma square. And this variance is equal to 8.83%. But please note that this is variance. We want standard deviation. Alright? Standard deviation is the square root of variance. So you simply take the square root of this variance value, and then you will have standard deviation, which is the square root of variance. And then you should have the value of the function. So you work out variance, you take square roots, you have the standard deviation. Up to this stage, any questions? I see some students may still get a little bit confusing about how to do this kind of calculation, but that's okay. I have an even better example from your workshop questions. And let's do this question as well, and then we have a break, okay? If you're still not sure about the step, about how to do the calculation, that's okay. Let's do this question together. Okay. Now, here is another example. This example is very similar to your lecture slides, but in this example, we prepare it in a way that is much easier for you to understand. Let's do it together, and then we have a break. Again, this one is asking to calculate standard deviation, and standard deviation represents for reason. Again, you have 5 years of the return. But I now get this 5 years of return from the Great Recession in 1920s. The Great Recession in 1920, at the beginning, it is a negative return on stock exchange. Again, there's 5 years of return. Am I right? For 5 years of return, if you want to calculate standard deviation, firstly, you need to know variance. If you want to know variance, first of all, you need to know the average return. So step 1, you need to calculate average return. How to calculate average return? Sum it up and divide by 5. Can you do that? We have all of these, right? Then what about step 2? Now, so for step 1, listen carefully, we sum it up, we have the average. Am I right? Am I right? For step 2, we want to work out for each of the return its deviation from the average value. Am I right? For each of the return its deviation from the average value, we use each of the return minus its average value. Do you agree? Am I right? And then you have for each of the return its deviation from the average value. And then, because negative and positive will cancel out, so what do? We take a square on each of the deviation. Am I right? We take the square on each of the deviation, we then sum it up. And this value is your numerator of your variance equation. Am I right? We take the deviation, we take the square, we sum them up. That is your numerator of your variance. This is your numerator of your variance. The denominator of variance is n minus 1, very easy, right? N 5 minus 1, so denominator must be 4. Once you have this sum value, are you able to work out variance? Can you do that? Once you work out variance, are you able to work out standard deviation? We take the square root. Let me see it again. When we talk about risk, without doing anything, I'll give you one example, and you guys told me, Harold, the second one is much riskier, right? Why they told me? Because it's more volatile, up and down. Very good. That's everything about risk. The next question is how we capture this up and down. Okay, we can capture it by using variance. Why we need to use variance? Because when it's moved up, move down, we need to work out its deviation from its average value. But up and down, the deviation might cancel out. So we take the square on the deviation of each of the deviation of average value of each of the points. Then we sum it up. And then we have the numerator. And then mathematically we divide it by n minus 1. We have variance. And then we take square root. The equation itself looks very scary, but once you do it step by step, it is not hard at all. In my example, step 1, we take the average. Step 2, for each of the return, 5 of them, we work out the deviation of each of them. Step 3, we take the square of the deviation of each of them. Step 4, we sum it up, and that will be a numerator of your variance. And then finally, we have numerator, we divide by n minus 1, we have variance. Variance is a squared value, because for each time form, you sum it up and take the square, right? We take the square root, we have standard deviation. That is your average standard deviation of your return deviate from the mean value, which captures the risk of the asset. As you all can see, the higher the standard deviation means the higher on average your return deviates from the average value, which means higher risk. Am I right? Let me see it again. The higher the standard deviation, which means the higher your return deviates from its average value, up and down, right? Which means higher risk. The lower the standard deviation, which means your return only deviates from the average value by a small magnitude, lower risk. Does this make sense for you? That's basically everything about how we capture risk. By using the variance equation. Okay? All right. Let's have a 12 minutes break. Please come back at 1. Okay? We then do the second part of the seminar. All right. Settle down, please. Let's get back to study. Okay. So before the break, we talked about what? We talked about how to measure risk and how to calculate risk. Specifically about return. There is dollar return, there is percentage return. We talked about the difference between dollar return and percentage return. We also talked about on what kind of scenario that you should apply dollar return and when you apply percentage return. There's no right or wrong, all right? You need to consider dollar return and percentage return in different scenarios. We then talked about how do we measure risk. Risk basically the market is up and down movements. And that's how we measure risk. Now, in the second part of the seminar, I will focus on something called systematic risk and unsystematic risk and diversification. First of all, let's start from the power of diversification. Probably forgot about something, but anyway. Generally speaking, what is diversification? Diversification means most of the individual share price show higher volatility than price of volatility of a portfolio of all ordinary shares. How can the standard deviation for individual share can be higher than standard deviation of portfolio? Generally speaking, portfolio investment means today, if you have money, instead of investing into an individual share, you now decide to invest it into a portfolio. And that's called diversification. Some of the students may be wondering, Harold, why should we do this? I'll explain to you later, all right? But just give you a general idea. That is, for diversification, it means do not put all of your eggs in one basket. Instead of invest everything into one individual share, you now prefer to invest everything into a portfolio, and that is called diversification. Diversification is the act of investing in many different assets rather than just a few, so as to reduce volatility. Generally speaking, the ups and downs of the share may partially cancel each other, and that's the beauty of diversification. Now, listen carefully. For portfolio investments, generally speaking, instead of investing only one share, you prefer to invest into a lot of shares. This is called portfolio investments. By doing that, it means that you diversify the share. By diversification, there's two benefits. The first benefit is that through diversification, sometimes the up and downs of the shares might cancel out. But of course, the risk of portfolio may decrease as well. I will explain later. The second benefit that through diversification, you may be able to eliminate some of the unwanted risk. And I will explain later as well. But at the very beginning, I want to show you this kind of graph. Generally speaking, from a correlations perspective, asset classes or different assets, they might have two types of correlationship. The first one is called negative correlation. Negative correlation means A and B share A and B. If you go up, share B goes down. If share B goes up, share A goes down. That's a negative correlation. Okay? There could also be positive correlation. Positive correlation means what? If A goes up, B goes up. A goes down, B goes down. And that's positive correlation, as you can see from the slide. A lot of lecture or a lot of universities, and even in the YouTube video or something, they taught the diversification in the wrong way. They get it totally wrong. The common mistake students used to make is like, okay, Robert, diversification is it means if these two shares, they are negatively correlated, I put them together, the risks are cancelled out. Yes and no, but that's not the main purpose of diversification. Why? Yes, if you are right, the risk cancelled out. No means, yes, the risk cancelled out, but you will have low return as well. If you have two assets, they are negatively correlated. You put them into one portfolio. What happens? If A goes up, B goes down. Okay, you may tell you, okay, on one hand, you hedge the position. If A goes down, B must go up. But on the other hand, what happens? You will have lower return. If on day one A goes up by 10%, B goes down by 8%, your overall return is only 2%. Yes, by doing this, your risk decreases. But on the other hand, your return decreases as well, right? And that's not the main purpose of diversification. That is just part of the function of portfolio investments. Get it? Let me see it again. That is not the main purpose of diversification. This is just part of the function of portfolio investments. Okay? So you might learn this concept in bachelor about diversification, and they'll actually told you, okay, this is all the right things. This is wrong. Alright? Okay. Now, what is the main purpose of diversification? I will give you an example. But before that, I would like to show you something very, very interesting. Now, if you don't have the lecture slides from the back, can you see the number? Can you see? Are you able to read the number from the back? Because I think that's the best I can do to. Let me try whether I can still enlarge it a little bit. Oh, I can still enlarge it a little bit. Okay. All right. In this example, it basically gives you standard deviation of many assets. Standard deviation, as already discussed, now as we know, is captures risk, right? Now, in the middle of column, is give you average return of each of the assets return, and then it gives you risk of each of the column. Okay. Now, before you look at the number, let me ask you a question. As per discussed, what is the relationship between risk and return? High risk, high return, right? That's something like a common sense, right? Now, let's say why does this relationship hold in this example? Look at the return. Can you guys please tell me which one have the highest return? Intel, right? 22.8% in the middle. Can you see that? Intel Corporation. Are you able to see it? Okay, which one have the highest risk? Okay, Intel is not bad. It's have highest risk as well, right? So just for Intel itself, it looks like high risk, high return. All right. Now I want to like to you guys tell me which one have the lowest return? American Airlines, right? But what about the risk of American Airlines? It's nearly at the top, isn't it? What happened? And those are the figures. Because I showed you, I enlarged the graph. Those are the figures from 1993 to 2010. What happened? What happened? Why the risk and return relationship does not hold? Standard deviation captures the total risk of the underlying asset during the time period, right? Standard deviation captures the up and down over the period, right? What happened? September 11. And that's why the tariff attack. And that's why American Airlines, their share price decreased by a huge amount. And that's why the risk is so high. But the question is, it might only affect that airline company, not all of airline companies in that industry, is it? The risk and return relationship does not explain in this scenario. Then what should we do? Generally speaking, if you look at the relationship, a lot of the risk and return relationship, it looks like they did not always move in synchronize. Now, I would like to tell you something about good risk and bad risk. Standard deviation itself, it captures total risk because it's merely a deviation that we calculated based on the share price movements. Am I right? It includes all of the information. It captures the total risk. But within total risk, there's two categories. The first one is named as systematic risk. Systematic risk means the volatility of the portfolio that cannot be eliminated. It is the business risk. Because systematic happens on the business. Okay? The second one is called unsystematic risk, bad risk. The unsystematic risk, it is a risk that will not systematically happen. You can name this as extraordinary risk. This is kind of the risk which is nothing to do with your business. This is a risk that will not give you any return. Okay? Because it's nothing to do with the nature of business. Let me give you guys an example, very simple example. Think about it. Assume I am a very good CEO. I run the company. I do business. My managerial ability is part of the business risk. Am I right? I run the company, and my company performing in this industry. I return all this role. That's it. But today, something bad happened. My beloved cat dead in the morning. So I feel sad. I made a stupid decision. Am I right? This kind of risk is an unsystematic risk. Because this risk is nothing to do with the business. Am I right? This risk apparently will not give you potential return. By taking this kind of risk, it will not benefit your company at all. Am I right? But this kind of risk is part of the total risk. Okay? Apparently, if you are an investor, you invest into my company. You only want to take or share the systematic risk with me, right? You don't want the unsystematic risk component. Do you agree? So what should you do? You want to eliminate the unsystematic risk. Am I right? How to eliminate the unsystematic risk? And that is the beauty of diversification. You should diversify your investments. For example, if you want to invest in my company, instead of investing everything into my company, what should you do? You go to the industry. You're looking for example, 30 similar type companies in this industry, and you invest into the 30 companies. Okay? You invest into 30 companies because we are all in the same industry. It will roughly give you the similar return. Am I right? On the other hand, think about this. Even something happened on me, something bad happened on me, I make stupid decision. I am only one out of 30. Am I right? This kind of unsystematic risk is diversified. Does this make sense for you? To this end, diversification to eliminate the unsystematic risk is very easy. You simply need to increase the number of companies in your portfolio. But increase your number of investments in your portfolio, this kind of risk, very specific risk, unsystematic risk, will be simply diversified away. Does this make sense for you? Any questions up to this stage? Yes. Huh? Microphone is that? Yes, yeah. When did you realize this issue? That's okay. I can still talk here. If the echo recording quality is not good, then I'll have a backup lecture. That's okay. I didn't realize this. All right. When did you realize my microphone is dead? How do you know that? It's not echoing, but how do you feel it's not echoing? Yeah, it's no battery. But anyway, that's okay. Let's talk about this systematic risk, continuing from my example. So from this example, you can tell the difference, am I right? To this end, diversification, or the concept of diversification, is very simple. Now, let's look at this graph here. If you look at this graph here, what happened? And that's the beauty of diversification. Please note, for each of the individual company, its total risk is captured by standard deviation. And within its total risk, there's good risk, systematic risk, and bad risk, unsystematic risk. The good risk, systematic risk, is related to the nature of the business. It is nothing to do with diversification, because no matter how you diversify it, you will not change the nature of the business. Am I right? But the unsystematic risk, it is something that you can diversify. You can eliminate. So if you look at this graph here, horizontal axis is the number of security, number of shares, for example, that you included in your portfolio. Vertical is the risk, represented by percentage or portfolio standard deviation, the portfolio risk. Now, at the very beginning, when you will only have one asset in your portfolio, the portfolio risk at the highest. Am I right? Because in this case, the portfolio risk have two components, unsystematic risk and systematic risk. Do you agree? Do you agree? And unsystematic risk and systematic risk, if you increase the number of shares in the portfolio, what happened to the unsystematic risk? Huh? If you increase the number of shares in the portfolio, what happened?
It drops.
Number of shares, it decreased. Am I right? But keep increasing number of shares in the portfolio, keep increasing number of shares in the portfolio, you diversify all of your unsystematic risk. Do you agree? But what happened to the systematic risk components? It will not be affected. For example, if you invest into the airline industry, no matter how many shares you included in your portfolio, the systematic risk is always there. Some of you guys may be wondering, hey Robert, what is the systematic risk or business risk for this business? Very easy, petrol price. Am I right? If there's petrol price or the impact of petrol price is equal to every business in this industry, no matter how many shares you included in your portfolio, you cannot eliminate such risk. Does this make sense for you? Regulations, systematic risk. If there is a regulation about airline business, it will affect everyone in this business. If you are not only impact one of them, you cannot eliminate this regulation risk. Do you agree? And those kind of risks are those kind of risks are systematic risks and cannot be eliminated. Up to this stage, any questions? So portfolio investments have two beauty. The first beauty, as you can see here, diversification. By investing into a portfolio, you are able to eliminate those unnecessary risks. Second beauty. The second beauty of portfolio investment is can help you to redesign your risk and return relationship. Because now you may want to have some shares that are negative correlated, you put it together to reduce your risk. Or you may want to double your risk by increased number of assets in the same industry. Now let's move back to the American airline example. Now you can tell me the reason. The reason that American airline have lowest return but highest risk simply because of its unsystematic risk component is too high. Am I right? Unsystematic risk will give you no return. To this end, high risk, high return relationship, it means high systematic risk, high return. Not high total risk. High total risk means nothing. Like my example, American Airlines. Am I right? Up to this stage, any questions? Any questions? Okay. Now, there is one more thing I forgot to mention as well. So I have two seminars, right? Today's seminar and Thursday's seminar. Okay? This Thursday, my seminar won't be me for lecturing. It will be a professor from another university as a program or something. So if you want to attend the Thursday seminar, you are welcome to join as well. All right? So if you want to listen again, see a different opinion from another lecturer, you are more than welcome to join another lecture on Thursday. All right? It will be Professor Desmond from McGill University, which is a very good university, apparently. but he will only be staying there for like 1 or 2 days. That's why he's only able to take the Thursday lecture, not this one. So just let you know this information. So if you want to attend, you can attend that one as well. But the content will be exactly the same, just 2 different presenters. Does this make sense for you? So just let you know to make sure that you understand what's going on here, all right? But Professor Desmond on Thursday, he's from a very good university, so if you want to go, you can probably attend that lecture as you wish, all right? To have a second opinion about how he explains risk and return relationship, but with the same materials. Though. Up to this stage, any questions? Any questions? Okay. All right. Basically, as previously discussed, so far we talked about systematic risk and unsystematic risk, and apparently we've talked about what really matters is the systematic risk. How a group of assets move together. Basically, total risk is equal to systematic risk plus unsystematic risk. Okay? And it is the systematic risk components that help us. All right, systematic risk. Which one of the following is an example of systematic risk? Now, some of the students or some of you guys may argue with me, however, those cases or those examples are really arguable. Like some of them is really depends on how you define the context. You are right, but generally speaking, let's think about the systematic risk. It is normally a risk that will affect the industry as a whole, affect the business that is related to your business. As long as you think this risk is related to your business, that is a systematic risk. Okay, first of all, investor sentiment, investors, their panic, investor sentiment causing the security price around the global decrease. What is it? For example, during the global financial crisis, investors, their panic, right? We have lower investment sentiments. What risk is it? It must be systematic risk because it affects everyone. Am I right? It systematically happens and systematically affects everyone, not only one of them. On that period of time, no matter how many shares you include in your portfolio, you cannot diversify this risk. Even you include 100 shares in your portfolio, you cannot tell investors don't panic. Am I right? Do you agree? Okay. Now, second, a flood washes away a firm's warehouse. Oh, this is an unsystematic risk. Am I right? Why? Because apparently it only affects your company and it won't systematically happen, right? So that is unsystematic risk. And this risk can be diversified. Because if you include 30 or 40 or 50 companies in your portfolio, this risk can be diversified in a particular day, right? Number 3, a city imposes an additional 1% sales tax on all processed food products. So for all companies in that city, it is a systematic risk. Because such regulation will affect everyone in this business, in this city. Am I right? I do have a student come to argue with me, hey Robert, what about a company from other city? If this is the case, it will not be affected. What about if I include companies from other cities in portfolio? This risk can be eliminated. You are right. It depends on how you define the context. If we only talk about within that city or within that country, it is systematic. If you are able to do global investment, it is unsystematic. Okay? Similarly, today, as you all know, especially for students, for example, from Asia, from India, or from China, if you or your parents is able to invest instead of only in India or China, but globally, you diversify your risk, right? Your parents probably don't want to invest only in China or India. They want to invest in other countries. Why? This is actually because of diversification. They might don't know the theory like what we learned here, but they know what should they do, right? They don't want to put all their eggs in one basket. Does this make sense for you? In those countries like Asia, like in Russia, in China, or in India, all the investors, they prefer to invest instead of just in their own country, but across different countries. And that is the purpose of diversification, because they want to eliminate this kind of risk. If you are only able to invest in your own country, then you cannot eliminate such risk. Or at least you cannot eliminate the political risk. Am I right? And that is something that you can have a think about in your mind. All right? Number 4, a toy maker has to recall its top-selling toy. A toy maker. Only one of them, right? This is unsystematic. If you invest in 100 toy maker companies, this risk is unsystematic. Finally is commodity. Normally, commodity means systematic risk. So corn price increase due to increased demand of alternative fuel. Commodity price impact the industry. So this is systematic risk. Commodity price such as gold, such as corn, such as petrol, such as oil, stuff like this. Up to this stage, any questions? Any questions? Any questions? Okay. Now, risk and return revisit. After these few slides, we will do the workshop question. This week, we will not only do this week's workshop question, we will also do last week's workshop question because we didn't do it last week, right? Okay. What do we learn so far? Risk and return. For various asset classes, there is a trade-off between total risk and return. Does this trade-off hold for individual security? No, it's not hold for individual security. For individual security, if you still remember the American airline example, high risk does not necessarily indicate high return because high risk simply high standard deviation. Am I right? It is the systematic risk component help us to give us return, not unsystematic risk. So the risk and return relationship only hold for systematic risk and return. But please remember, we know that unsystematic risk is a bad risk, but we don't know how to differentiate unsystematic risk from systematic risk. Yes, we know that by diversification we can eliminate such risk, but to what extent? And that is an empirical question in this literature, in this business, in finance. We still can't solve it. And this will be further discussed next week. Okay? What should we do? How do we capture the systematic risk component from its total risk? And that is something we will discuss next week. In these slides, I showed you the risk and return relationship about this table. Okay, so this slide is the risk and return relationship of this table. As you can see, horizontal axis is risk, total risk. Vertical is return. Intel have the highest risk and highest return. But for most of them, even they have high risk, American airline, their return could be low. So it's not a linear relationship. And that is because this is a graph about total risk and return, not systematic risk. Okay? Overall, the trade-off between standard deviation and return that holds for asset classes does not hold for individual share. For individual share, its total risk is standard deviation. It comprises systematic risk and unsystematic risk. For portfolio, it holds because for portfolio, it is very diversified. No unsystematic risk. But for individual shares, no. Total risk is measured by standard deviation, which contains systematic and unsystematic risk. Because investors can eliminate unsystematic risk, the market only rewards for systematic risk. Only systematic risk is a good risk, and only good risk give you return. High good risk, high return. High systematic risk, high return. Any questions up to this stage? Very good. Okay. And that's basically everything for this week's seminar, but we have a lot of things haven't finished yet, okay? Up to this stage, any questions? All right. Before we move to your workshop question, there is one thing that I would like to talk with you about your APPLIA homework. First of all, I want to apologize because this website is always encountering issues. Now, a lot of students told me that sometimes they just can't get into the APPLIA page. For the APPLIA homework page, you have to type the full name. You have to type www.applia.com. So you have to type the full name. If you only type APPLIA or applia.com, it may direct you to Cengage page. And you have to use this small link here, all right? And students ask me, "Hey, Robert, why?" Because we didn't pay. Because we use it for free. And they want us to buy the book and use the Cengage account. But because I don't want you to buy the book, so we get it free. And that's how they treat me. But don't worry, I'm arguing with them every day. So it will be better next semester. We will have a link and build into Cloud Deacon. But that's what should we do, okay? I know this website is not good, but we just want the content as long as it's free for us, which is good, okay? All right, second, about your homework sign-in. It looks like the Internet Explorer is not good, so I prefer to do it in Google. At the meantime, because we want to do workshop question, you may want to prepare or have a pen and paper in front of you, okay? So let me show you about your group sign-in and other things. So basically, now I hope that you already decided whether you're going to do it in a group or individually. But either way, you need to do what? You need to do group sign up. You can't do it now because I still lock it. I haven't unlocked it. Basically, in this Friday, you're then able to click groups. Once you click groups, as you can see, there are so many groups, right? You and your group member make a decision and pick a group, and then click it. Just one click, that's it. And then you join a group. No matter you do it individually or do it in a group, you have to sign up for a group. Otherwise, you can't submit your assignment because I linked the group with the assignment submission box. Does this make sense for you? Okay? I link it together. Any questions? Even you do it individually, you need to sign up for a group. Now, if you unfortunately sign into a wrong group, or if you do it individually, someone forced himself or herself into your group, let me know. I can remove you to another group. Get it? See, for example, Robert, I'm in group 86, and someone just joined my group. I don't even know her, or I don't even know him. Don't worry, I will move you to another group. Okay? Or if this student consistently follow you, then you probably need to figure out another way, but let me know, I will help you, all right? Once you have the group, for assignment submission, as you all know, you click assessment, you click assignment. My view will be different from yours, all right? But that's how it looks like. The assignment submission box is being set. In your assignment submission box, you actually able to see your marking rubric. And I haven't uploaded yet, but next week sometime, I may give you a PDF version of the marking rubric, how it looks like. Because I don't know why some students just want a marking rubric because they may want to write their assignment according to the rubric. Well, this is a smart idea, but I don't think this is a good idea because if this is the way, it simply limits your creative thinking skills because you're basically following what is described there. Just complete your assignment, all right? Just do your assignment in the normal way. Instead of like, okay, this is rubric, this is a template. I should have do the question 1. Robert want me to do this, A, B, C, and D. I shouldn't have all those kind of things. Don't. Marking rubric is just for me to mark your assessment. I follow it, but I still give you extra marks based on your work, based on your quality of your work. All right? But I will give you the marking rubric probably next week sometime. But this week you probably think about the structure of your assessment. Finally, before we move to the workshop question, again, please make sure that you start your assignment as early as possible. Up to this stage, you basically have 99% of the knowledge you need to do your assignment 2. Which means, essentially, you can even start to write it up tonight. Am I right? Try to do it as early as possible. Don't leave it to the last minutes. Okay, this is so stupid to leave everything to the last few minutes. All right? And is it next week we have trimester break? Okay, I'm not 100% sure. If so, don't come, all right? If you have trimester break, don't come to the class. I won't be here, okay? Just, all right? And all right, let's talk about your workshop question. So this week, we will have 2 workshop questions to cover. And again, don't forget about your apply homework, okay? Your apply homework, now you already have 3 homeworks, and today you have the 4th one. Did I open? Okay, let's first of all start from your week 4 homework. We haven't had the chance to do it last week because last week we have a very tight schedule. We need to cover your assignment 2, right? But we will look about it this week. So last week's homework, so I hope that you at least have a general idea about what we learned last week. So last week we learned about the dividend discount model. We learned about how to work out the present value of a share. It could be 0 growth rate. It could be constant growth rate. It could be 2-stage variable growth rate. Am I right? Let's look at the question. The company share pays a dividend once each year. And it just distributes this year's dividends. Just distribute means what?
D0.
Very good. D0 is $0.05. You can write it down. D0 is 85 cents. The market price of each of the share is $12.14. $12.14. The company estimated that it will increase its dividend by 7% per annum forever. Okay, the market price of each share is given. The growth rate, looks like a constant rate, 7% forever, right? Now, after contemplating the risk of the share, Gail is willing to hold the share only if it provides an annual expected return of at least 13%. Should she buy the share or not? Annual expected return is expected return from equity. Expected return from equity is from investor's perspective. It's same as cost of using equity. It's same as R. So basically, this 13% is R. Discount rate, right? Now, what is this question? This question, number 1, constant growth model. Am I right? Number 2, D0 is given. Number 3, share price is given. Number 4, G, growth rate is given. It asks you to calculate what? R. And then, by using the calculated R to compare with the expected return. And then make your decision. Am I right? Okay, perform your calculation. I'll give you 1 minute. Let's do the calculation. So share price equal to D0 times 1 plus G divided by R minus G. So for those who do not remember the equation, that's okay. Share price is equal to what? D0 times 1 plus G divided by R minus G. Am I right? Do you agree? And in this question, share price is given. Am I right? 12.14 is equal to D0, 0.85 times 1 plus 7% divided by R minus 7%. And the question is asking you to solve R. Am I right? Now solve it. My beloved microphone is no power. So strange. How much is it? Huh? After you perform the calculation, R is 14.49%. R is 14.49%. R is 14.49%. What is your expected return? Huh? What is your expected return? What is your expectation? And the share offers more, then what should you do? You buy it, right? And that's how you make your decision. Up to this stage, any questions? Through calculation, R is 14%, and the return on share is more than expected, 13%, then you buy the share. Any questions? Okay. Next question. No, this one. The company operates a chain of weight loss center. The company recently paid an annual dividend of $2.70. What happened? $2.70 annual dividends. That is D0, am I right? So write down D0, $2.70. Now the next bit is a little bit challenging. Investor will expect the company will increase the dividend by 25% in each of the next 3 years. So please draw a timeline. Draw a timeline. For D1, D2, and D3, it will increase at 25%. Do you agree? After that, it is anticipated dividend will grow at 6% forever, which means start from D4 onward. Am I right? D4 onward, it is a constant growth rate. So the constant growth rate G is 6%. Do you agree? Now R is 11%. What is the share price? This is a variable growth rate model. Am I right? Do you agree? This is a variable growth rate model. For this variable growth rate model, we need to divide them into 2 stages. Stage 1, identify the constant growth rate stage. Start from D4 onward. Start from D4 onward. By using dividend discount model, we will have a P3. Do you agree? Then you work out D1, D2, D3 individually, together with P3. Then what should you do? Then you discount it one by one accordingly. Am I right? Let's see the solution. At time 0, you have a D0, $2.7. Then 25% each year for 3 years. D1, D2, D3 will be affected. Start from D4 onward, constant growth rate, 6%. So you can use the constant growth rate model to work out a P3. P3 equal to D4 divided by R minus constant growth rate G. Am I right? Let's work out D1. D1 will equals to D0 times 1 plus 25%. Let's work out D2. It's equal to D1 times 1 plus 25%. Let's work out D3. It equals to D2 times 1 plus 25%. Let's work out D4. D4 is equal to D3 times 6%, 1 plus 6%. Am I right? And D4 is equal to D3 times 1 plus 6%. You calculate P3. P3 is equal to D4 divided by R minus G. Am I right? Because start from D4 onward, it is a constant stage. So you then able to work out P3. Up to this stage, about D1, D2, D3, D4, and P3 calculation. Any questions? Once you work out D3, rest of the question is very easy. Now P0 is depends on 4 cash flows. D1, D2, D3, and P3. Do you agree? Do you agree? And then you discount each of them one by one, and then you will have a P0. And that's the whole process about how to work out share price if you have more than one growth rate. Up to this stage, any questions? Any questions up to this stage? Very good. All right. Please note that those are the workshop practices for last week. And please note that you need to do the apply homework for last week as well, right? Don't forget about it. You can use those as practices. Let's move to your this week's workshop question. And in fact, this week's workshop question, we already did one of the questions. But I want to do that question again to refresh your memory. Okay. Let's look at the first question for this week's workshop. And then the second question, we covered in the class, but I want you to do it again, all right? A financial advisor claims that a particular share earned a total return of 10% last year. During this year, the share price rose from $30 to $32.5. What dividend did the share pay? Now, you are the financial advisor. You claim that for investment of the share, your total return over the last year is 10%. The share price for initial investment is $30. Question: if initial investment $30, your total percentage return 10%, how much is your total dollar return? $3. Very good. Am I right? Your total dollar return is $3. Now, the share price increased from 30 to 32.5. How much is your capital gain? $2.5. Am I right? Your total dollar return is $3. Your capital gain, $2.5. How much is your dividends? $3 minus $2.5, which will be 50 cents. Am I right? Up to this stage, any questions? Let's do the second question. Try to do it by yourself. A practice, very simple. The company share pay a $1.50 dividends each year. Each year. A year ago, the share sold for $25, and their total return during the past year was 20%. What does share sell today? So basically, it gives you a future selling price. It also gives you a dividend. Total return of the past year, 20%. What do the shares sell for today? Are you able to do it? This question is a little bit complex. I give you 2 minutes to do it. All right, think about how to do it. You may want to set up the equation and try to solve it. So assume share price today is P0. P0 times 1 plus 20% is equal to what? Is equal to $25 plus $1.5. Am I right? And then you can work out P0. Think about how to do it. And tell me whether you are able to do it. So P0, $25 times 1 plus 20%. It should equals to today's price plus dividends. Then you solve it. Am I right? How to solve it? Total return 20%. D 50. P today the purchase price $25. So basically $25 times 1 plus 20% is equals to D plus P1. Rearrange the equation, you can work out P1, and P1 should be $28.5. Does this make sense for you? Or in another word, do it simple. Today share the purchase price $25, 20% return. Your total dollar return will be $5. Am I right? $25 times 20% will be $5. Your total dollar return $5. Your dividend return $1.5. Your capital gain return must be $3.5. Your last year share price 25. Your capital gain $3.5. Your today's share price must be 28.5. That's it. Okay? Up to this stage, before we move to the last question, any questions? Last question. We did this question in class. Now I want you to do it individually. All right? To help you to do it individually, I may want to show you the equation so you can do it by yourself. Just give me a second. Let's see whether I've been able to paste it here. It's just don't allow me to paste it here. But that's all right. Just give me a second. It just don't allow me to paste it here. All right, let's do it together, but without look at the solution. So to work out the variance or standard deviation of this question, step one, what should you do? You need to work out the average of this one, right? Now, I can tell you the average. The average is 10.86%. So you can write it down. Average is 10.86%. For the time being, I don't want you to work out all of the squares of the differences. But I want you to work out 90-20, the first one. Can you tell me what is the deviation of that return to its mean? And what is the squared deviation? So only do 90-20. So mean is 10.86%.
Minus 0.289.
Mean is 10.86%. Then how much is the deviation for 90-20? And how much is the squared deviation? Work it by yourself.
Minus 0.289.
Yeah. Thank you. Just try to work it out, and I will come back to that one. I want you to do this practice so you know how to work it out. Once you know how to do it for 1 year, you should also know how to do it for the rest of the years.